I'm in a position right now where I have the opportunity to actually help a young person or an adult, I don't care, who might be thinking about this, either epilepsy or their own little, everyone has their, as my father used to say, everyone has their shit.
I love it when you have people that you think you know, that you don't know, but you went to school with them, maybe not at the same time, but then you kind of watch their path. And I got to tell you, social media right now is getting like shit on everywhere. But I like social media for certain things, like being able to track careers of people like Josh Golden, who is our guest. And Josh, you are like a toggler, man. Like you've done all sorts of things. You've been in production. You have, but it's cool. Like I imagine that has to
My wife calls me the Marco Polo of industry travelers. I've been in a lot of different spaces, and I like to investigate. I enjoy that part.
Well, let's start with the obvious thing for the listeners, that you sound really good. Like, why do you sound so good?
Well, I tried to, when the pandemic started, I was like, you know what, I'm going to try that. By the way, I didn't set up my digital SLR, but I would have been even next level, but I got like a really high end mic, and I got a great camera, and I got a whole setup to make me feel like I had a space to be in, because I believe that, I don't know, I guess I just believe that 90% of the effort happens in the last 10% of the job. And, you really, that polish that comes in there ends up being just like, well, it just sound a little better. Even if it's just 5% better, it's worth it.
Why do people not get that? Why do people that is the difference. Is it like the details do matter? No doubt.
It really does. It really does. That's why when it comes to painting, I do not cut in. I like to roll, because I'm just not the best painter. But when it comes to really professional anything, I'm like, I know we can get 90% of this. Basically, so many people can get 90% of it done, but the last 10% takes a very special expert to be like, no, this mattered that this was centered. This mattered that this was logical. There's the subtleties that I tend to really focus on. The thank you note matters. Gratitude matters. And I just believe that that the pieces that sometimes get overlooked are sometimes the pieces that people think they're like, yeah, it's good enough. And good enough in the marketing universe for me is, or even production, frankly, has always been like, no, it's got to be as close to perfect as I physically have the time to make it happen.
Perfectionist. All right. So
it's a little bit of anyway, sorry, I interrupted your intro. I screwed up everything already. I messed it all up.
Just cut this. We're going to throw all of this out. No,
it's all garbage.
I was going to say, you don't have, when I read your bio, I don't see a lot of free time for painting. You got about 2 decades of experience in marketing, branding, media, production. Today, you're a chief marketing officer at Quad. You've done some amazing things in just the publishing business. Not really a traditional path to CMO, but I like I said, I think that's more of a compliment. Like, take me back to the beginning for you. Will you? Like, give me when you like kind of, this is your life moment. Where do you start?
I'm ready.
Where do you start?
So, gosh, I guess the first most, I always had to figure out when I was doing interviews in my young life, I realized that sometimes people were bad interviewers, and I had to figure out like, what story do I go tell that's really exciting for people to know about? So the first story that luckily I had as my first big story was this story around my first big job, which was just out of Paramount Pictures after going and getting my film degree in Ithaca. And then I was like, I'm going to go make movies, because I was like, I'm going to be a director, because I thought that's what you do. And so I went out to LA, and my father and my mother wished me fond farewell and just let me drive away without any plan. I just kind of went, and I got a job, and immediately then followed up with another job. But the job it's kind of the after Paramount, where I was the head PA for the John Tesh and Lisa Gibbons show from Hollywood, which, by the way, was awesome, but gave me bad dreams because it was such a grind. The job I immediately got, which was really let me sort of spread my wings, which I was hired by effectively Marcia Clark's team to go produce all the graphic exhibits that were used for the People versus O.J. Simpson trial. Working for Marcia every night at 4:30, she would call me and be like, here's our problem, and I would have to come up with a creative, approach, and then run by storyboards with her. And then we'd shoot it that night. I would edit overnight because I got an Avid station, purchased for me because I needed to be one person. They want to have control over everything. And then I would deliver it in the morning, every morning. And Johnny Cochran would come up to me as I was delivering the laser disc, and we both be wearing ties. I was a tie guy at the time. Now I'm a pocket square guy. And he would say to me, what do you have for us today, Josh? And I would always say, Mr. Cochran, I can't tell you, but it is really, really good. I was 21, so I was like this, young kid, and he was always kind to me. But whenever they did, in fact, bring up a topic, like the one most famous exhibit that I produced was this. Remember, this is before GPS. This is 93. So this is, nothing existed. And they made an argument one day in the afternoon about the fact that it was impossible for O.J. Simpson to get from Rockingham to Bundy, kill two people and get back. And I said to Marcia that afternoon, or I think it was her ADA that called me. And I said, what if we produced an exhibit that showed, basically a blinking dot on a map with a video in the upper right-hand corner, and then showing how you can get from Bundy at 10:30 to Rockingham, wait 98 seconds or whatever it was that he felt that the actual murders took place to do the whole walkthrough and drive back and show irrefutably that you can do it in less than 22 minutes. I think it was 13 minutes we did it in. So it was the most visible piece of content that I think I'll ever produce, that it's been by tens of millions of people, or maybe by hundreds of millions of possibly, but it was the one irrefutable. They immediately, after where they showed it, it was like, well, that's obviously possible. And we moved on to the next time. The point is that story and that my work on the Simpson trial allowed me to have this great little facet of the first little thing of, I can do something hard that many people might not be able to do at that level. And it allowed me to always have a story to tell about, like, that was the thing that I did. That was kind of the first, oomph into, like, I can do good storytelling. Yeah.
There's two things that come to mind out of the gate. First of all, you can do things that are hard, lovingly, because we're both Ithaca bombers. Surviving Ithaca's weather is
tough.
Is hard.
Whoa. If you can make it through that, right? Right. And I did 8 a.m. classes. I was committed. I always wanted to do 8 a.m. classes.
Well, that's ridiculous to me, because but I do think that it was a little bubble. Like, if you actually did give a shit, like you said about class, television, radio, Park School Communications, being hands-on did really set me up for what I'm even doing now. Yeah. And two, and I say this with all due respect, like, oh, great, he just called me old on the show, because I'm old. Okay.
I'm old. Yes, I'm not. I think, listen, at 50, I just turned 50. So
hey, happy birthday.
Thank you. But I just will tell you that, like, I feel like, besides my body starting to sort of fall apart, but I still feel like I have a lot of juice. And, even though I'm 30 years past college, I feel like I'm just starting to get like an afterburner kind of feel. And I'm reliant on the education I had from school and my MBA and all the history I have to sort of put me in a position to be the most successful I can be, and using all those facets to get me to where I am. So, Stu, I was in Hilliard Hall watching this trial, by the way. Okay. That must have been crazy. All right. So like, that was basically school, right? It's cold out. You get home. My whole entire sophomore year was basically watching the trial with my roommates. That's what we did. But I love what you said, like, about like this reinvigoration. And I feel the same way. And here's my, I wonder moment secret. And you tell me if you think that this is like, oh yeah, there's something to that. They always tell us in marketing, right? Like, hey, pick a lane, right? Don't try to be all things to all people. Like, find your lane and then articulate it and be vocal about it, be smart about it, be authentic about it. But then when real life happens, most people are afraid to piss somebody off. So we stay really wide. We don't pick a lane. We don't want to offend anybody. We aren't going to be courageous. But like, even with courageous, like, I'm trying to find my 3.4 million people, the 1%. I'm not trying to be for the other 37 million people. Right. Do you feel like you're invigorated because you've done you're on this journey, you've found something you're passionate about, and therefore it makes it easier to do
like, yeah, I love this stuff. I'm going to continue to double down on it and take everything I learned from all these other verticals, or is it something else?
No, I actually think I know it sounds, I can't tell if this is a cop out, but I do like the idea of always being the person to influence the change, to drive the change. And it's just, I think I'm going to say probably before even career stuff. Like I was always like, let's do a student show. I don't know, like it sounds silly, but the truth is that kind of thing is like, that was hard as a 15-year-old to go like, let's go make a play or do, I know it sounds totally high school, but the point is that when you have that inclination to do that, you'll always have that little bit of I think we can probably pull this off. I just like to do the hard thing. Because the puzzle for me is so much more fascinating than like, well, let's do the same thing I did before. Let's do that playbook and it will probably work. I love going into something and understanding it and kind of falling in love with it. And then once you love it, you want it to improve, just like, Quad or Ad Age or NBC Universal or AT&T, or all these great brands that I worked with, Xerox, all these great brands needed me, or I believe they utilized me as the catalyst to drive change. And that's the thing that I would say, if there's a reason why you go get Josh Golden for something, it's because that's what I do best. This is what I love to do as my knee jerk. Like, let's make this better. Let's make it different. And that's what I kind of just love that piece.
Josh, you get 1 minute on this one. Ready?
I'm ready.
All right. So you and Johnny Cochran are best friends. Take me from there to today. Go.
Oh boy. Okay. Johnny Cochran. So that was Decision Quest, which my consulting firm I worked for that consulting firm. Then I came back and worked for AT&T, and I was a sales guy. I loved that job. And I got my MBA at the same time at NYU, which was crazy. And I don't totally remember that time of my life. Then I got married to a wonderful, amazing singer-songwriter who was awesome, wonderful wife to my 2 amazing children. Or that took later, but that happened also. Then AT&T, I was there for a bit, then went to a couple of startups, just like .com startups that were all a mess.
20 seconds.
Yeah. Then I'm doing good. Then I got to Y&R. Then NBC Universal, ran their digital division off of all Universal. Then Havas. Then Story Worldwide. Then I did Gray, was the chief digital officer. Then went to Xerox. Was their head of digital marketing, and then was the president and publisher at Ad Age, which I loved for 5 years, which was fabulous. And then most recently just moved to the CMO as the CMO of Quad, a $3 billion public company that is focused always on solving the problems of marketers. And we're on a mission. I'm so excited to be here.
And stop. No, okay, I'm kidding. You went a little over, but you crushed it. No, it was great.
Okay, good.
No, the point of it is, I mean, you've sort of leaped from vertical to vertical, and
yes,
and I'm
unafraid,
and like you learn the vertical and then you extract what you need as you move to the next. But like a lot of people just sort of get stuck in a vertical, they get stuck in an industry, and maybe stuck's not the right word. Maybe they fall in love with the industry.
I think they love it. They're like, I'm good at this thing, and they do it well. I mean, there's a Jack Welch, like, do the thing and do it well and be number 1 or number 2, and that's it. I purposefully don't choose that because I think that is not helping me learn as a marketer. Like even this job, like I'm a new CMO. I've never been a CMO officially at a public company, and I run large brands. But the truth is, I've learned so much in this last year that I've been at this job, and it's been fascinating for me to like, wow, I didn't know how manufacturing worked, and now I do. I mean, as you can only do it 1 year in, but I will tell you that learning I could never repeat anywhere else. Like NBC Universal, I had meetings with the showrunners where I'm like, can we try this thing? And as a marketing guy, coming in like as a digital guy, and they're like, can we try a webisode series with The Office? And they're like, sure. I'm like, it was kind of easy. But I had an idea, and we had, partners that wanted to do it. It was just perfect. And those are the things I just like, being that person.
As you've sort of gone through your career and you've leaped into new verticals, I will say, I do think often the concept of doing something original or innovative is you see something in one vertical, and as you leap to the next vertical, you're like, wait, why isn't anybody
doing something like that? No one's
talking about this in this vertical. Right. Do you see it that way? Is that?
Yeah, I do. And the best part about it is having the rear view mirror to look back. I know when I was there, we did this other thing, and you get to apply the intelligence that you have in somewhere else to the current, your current vertical or the industry, and it becomes, or the geography. There's a lot of sort of potential, connective tissue that lets you this might work here. I remember when I went from NBC and had this strategy of edges of entertainment, like everything needed to be in digital, about the edge of where entertainment exists. Like, yeah, of course you can watch it on television, but where the really cool factor lives is in the digital space. And that was a strategy that I approached that job with. And I see that strategy continuing to evolve. It's continuing to evolve. I watched Jimmy Kimmel last night. It was Kerry Washington was hosting, and I saw this concept that it's now sort of this DVR buster, effectively, which they kept Kerry Washington as they were changing the set from like her opening to the actual interviews, and they kept her live on set, showing video of her interacting with the crowd. While not hearing the audio, but it kept me watching during the commercial because I wanted to see, well, how do they change the set? So this whole concept I had of when this is dating NBC, but when Jay Leno leaned over and wanted to talk to the guest, I wanted to know what they were talking about and what was the conversation. And that singular idea is, I think, continuing to grow and expand. And I saw it like a little bit last night, although different network.
I don't know. It sounds like you missed production to me.
I do. I love a good production. I will admit to you that my, every time I do a film piece, all the producers that worked with me who are listening to this, I apologize now and in the future. I am endlessly tweaking and coiling cable in my head and making certain that once you learn to coil cable. Scott Lozay, shout out if you didn't get exposed to him, but he was the gentleman who taught me how to coil cable, and he's a fabulous he's a director now and major production human being. But like that, the concept of making certain that the studio is neat when you left, there's something about that makes it feel like, no, this is done the right way. And I feel like that kind of thought is something I always get excited about when I get a chance to do production again. I just love the ability to be on a set.
So let's go back to your Ad Age days, which wasn't too long ago. You did, I think,
no, recent
half decade over there. So tell me why you were like, all right, this was awesome. And we'll get into it because you made a ton of content there, and I'd love to even hear about it. But like, why do you feel it was time for you to kind of leap into quad? Move on. Well,
I mean, I to be honest, they when they asked me to join, I was at Xerox running all the digital pieces that they, all that marketing piece, and they reached out to me and it was one of those calls that you get. You're like, huh. They were like, I thought they were calling me for a recommendation for someone else, and I was like, I know some of the best. I thought they wanted a sales guy. And I was like, I'm not a sales guy. I mean, I can sell, but I'm not a sales guy. I'm an idea person, and I'm a brand evolver. And I sat and chatted with Rance Crane, who was the patriarch of the business, and his father GD Crane started it up, and he was such a in the 30s, during the Depression, and advertising age at the time, was when I joined. I said to Rance, I think we need this brand feels. It felt to me like I used it to learn when I was at Y&R. Chris Goodman, who was my boss at Y&R, and then I went on to run the CMO of Accenture and PwC and so many wonderful consultancies. And he said to me, you have to read Ad Age every day. And I was like, okay, I'll do it. And I learned from the other industry titans of what they were doing. And I never, ever thought of myself as ever being in that position of actually running that publication as the president and the publisher. But when Rance said to me, we want you to think about this brand. And I was like, and I realized they wanted me to potentially for the job. I said, well, and we need to help evolve the brand and make it more relevant and make it more current and make it more valuable for, insight and wisdom, and have it be data led. And he said, he leaned back in his chair and pushed back from his seat and said, Josh, you just reminded me of my father, GD Crane. And I said, you mean the guy who invented the thing? He's like, well, you have a similar enthusiasm for him when it comes to this business. And I really do love the business of marketing and advertising. So for me, it was a no-brainer. So when I joined, having the benefit of changing the brand from advertising age, which was really CPG led and kind of really commercial led, into Ad Age, which gave it permission to widen its aperture and be much more about the future of where marketing was going. And of course, not forgetting the bright, shiny objects, but you still have to deliver the news and connect people to the thing that mattered to them, but also provide a polish, a kind of a special, like a little excitement about the brand. And I love that piece that they let me, the Crane family let me go execute. And we made it was an amazing 5-year run. And I was so I love the job so passionately, just like I love what I'm doing now. You fall in love with what you're doing, and you bring the best people together to do the hard thing together. And when you evolve a brand and change your brand and make it into a new thing, you get different constituencies starting to enjoy it. And that job for me, and the content I created, the hot seat interview concept, was just a singular idea that I was like, I'm just going to do this. I'm going to start to talk to people because I want to have that interaction like we're having right now. It's wonderful, and you got to hear insight, and I learned, and I have to tell you, it was such a great exposure. Not to mention the fact that it's sort of getting a relationship like on steroids. Like, wow, I suddenly knew everybody. Of course, being the president of Ad Age, everyone wanted to talk to you because they wanted access. But I also had the benefit of choosing like 100 people or so. I'm still friendly with, where we still have that ongoing, I'm a serial texter, and we just sort of stay in touch. And I find that job really enabled not only the brand to evolve very substantially, but also, in fairness, I really got some wonderful moments of visibility and access that I probably hadn't had before, which I deeply appreciate.
Well, look, I think the name of the game in everything is relationships, and it's figuring out your style, right? So I'm smiling a little bit here because you made so much content at that age, and I never really linked this, but like you kind of learned from the best with Johnny Cochran. Like you really did. Like he was the first who really brought the show to the biz, and like that I really remember at that
Polish
level.
it up, yeah.
And so as you go through life and you sort of collide into personalities, you're like, is there a little bit of me like that? Is there a little bit of me like that? And then you get to Ad Age and you've seen a lot of personalities. It wasn't like you just put out a piece of content from the president once a month. Like you were pretty much recording.
I was cranking. Yeah. It was constant.
Like, how much content did you think you made?
I think I did like 300 different video pieces of content on a weekly basis, just because people wanted to talk. And to be honest, and to be fair, sometimes they didn't want to actually talk to edit because it wasn't as curated as they perhaps would have liked to have been. So I came up with an idea. I was like, let's do a hot seat, and it'll be a conversation. It'll be conversational, just like this is right now, because I'm a curious marketer, and you tell me the thing you really want to make sure you hit on, and I'll make certain we get it in there. And it was a singular product, but it ended up being a really great relationship builder to find out what's going on and how you're working and what's interesting to you. And I developed such wonderful, fun, ongoing, big, long-term relationships that were based on the fact that I'm a good conversationalist, or at least I think of myself as one, and that I don't mind, well, what is it that you actually are here to do as a business goal? But if you work it into a question, it feels like it's the same benefit for them as a value-added conversation. And then whether at Cannes or South by Southwest or in the large events that you go to, you want to have visibility during those key moments. We made a product that was very much in fit with what the marketer needed during that moment. And it became a massive, massive product.
Now, I know you love all your children equally, I'm sure here that would be your answer. But of the 300 pieces of content that you made, you had to pick, you got to pick like, hey, I don't know why this one pops, but give me like the most, like, oh my God, what an amazing
There was
hour.
a good moment. Yeah, there was a good moment. Yeah, there was so Carolyn Everson and I had a chat the day of the Cambridge Analytica breach. So I just happened to be sitting down with her the morning at Shop Talk, and I was like, she had her whole, you can imagine her whole team around her, and she and I were friends. So I said, listen, Carolyn, I can't. I would like to ask you, and they're all sort of standing around her. And I said, Carolyn, is it okay? And she said, yeah, I really want you to ask the question. And they were all, in a titter over it. But I knew that she is, just to be fair, she was 100%, upfront and gave the best answer possible, given what she knew that morning, and was, extraordinarily poised. And I've always been so impressed with her and how she's, every single moment of her career evolution, she's been just amazing. And so when I had the benefit of doing that hot seat with her for 15 or 20 minutes, I was just, I kind of was in myself, watching myself ask her the questions about what she was, how it, was impacting her. And I got to say the exact right framing. So it let her sort of answer the question well. I love that one. I will tell you that there are a few others that pop that were very visible, but getting a chance to chat with some, let's say the others that really made that were there were a few others that popped for me. Sometimes it was where we were, like Kofi Gottfried at Facebook, or Alvin Bowles. Also, they're so charismatic people to get to talk to and be like, oh my God, I love you and I think you're awesome. But I'm trying not to sort of coo too much about them. I did get to do one with Robin Wright Penn, which was Robin Wright, sorry. And she was fascinating what she was doing at Cannes. And so you got the benefit of, some sort of celebrity-ish moments that happened. But it did launch my ability with the show that I did, Eureka, because it came out of that kind of interview style of, let's talk about the thing that's kind of interesting that you're doing, that I did post Ad Age, which was like, here's a big idea that this person came up with and what helped them get to that idea. And I just love that thought. And so I was able to really go deep on that. And with my interview skills that I developed at Ad Age, I sort of launched this whole other thing, which is now my own brand, which I just love doing. And I promise to get back to it, but is definitely my quad is taking some of my time for sure.
Well, look, it's cool to, it's a show about courage, right? So to see you keep pushing is noticeable and commendable. And I'll share that what actually made me want to circle back with you was some pretty courageous big news you personally shared with.
Oh, right. That was also on social media that I posted that.
That was on Facebook. And, again, and it's your current sort of spar with epilepsy. And, when I read that from you, I was like, all right, this guy, like, first of all, he needs to get up. He wants to tell the world this. Like, he needs to get it out.
That's true.
But second, I was just like, yeah. Like, was it liberating to talk about it? And
I got to tell you, it was craziness. I have to, so this quick story is, when I was 13, I had my first seizure, and we had no idea what it was. And we found out a couple years later that it was actually a cyst in my left temporal lobe that they had to drain with a shunt. And it was a whole brain surgery, and no joke. And I was very sick, but, made it through that surgery and then had another brain surgery around 38 where they had to, basically remove the shunt. And I'm all, seizure controlled on medication, but I admit that at that young age, it was, the 80s, and it wasn't cool to have a seizure, and it wasn't cool. Nothing was cool, frankly, to be anything different. Pardon me. And nothing was cool at all. And so having a seizure or being anything strange was just the worst. So I basically always kept it quiet, and I never told anyone ever. And it was, 35 years, 36, 30, I guess 37 years later, where I was like, I'm in a position right now where I have the opportunity to actually help a young person or an adult, I don't care, who might be thinking about this, either epilepsy or their own little, everyone has their, as my father used to say, everyone has their shit. So, it's the truth is everyone really does. And being afraid of that, for so many years, I never told anybody. I never told my boss. I never told anybody. I would maybe tell people who I really loved at work, so they just in case something happened, which it had happened a few times in my young life, and it was really uncomfortable for me. Anyway, the point is, I decided in this moment to actually reach out to the Epilepsy Foundation and say I'd like to help, and be, if you'll take me, be a part of your board. And then they interviewed me and accepted me, and I was like, I'm going to be speaking and talking about my about my epilepsy history, but I'm going to talk about it for the first time ever. And it was so frightening for me to be able to talk about something like this that was so personal, that I've kept such secret, because I was always desperately afraid that someone would think differently about me. Like, oh, he has epilepsy, versus he's fine and has epilepsy. But, the truth is there's so many wonderful people that have different disease states that they tend to keep quiet because they're embarrassed. But things with the brain specifically, it's a high order of embarrassment for me. And it's not fair to say, but I can't compare my disease state to everyone, but shame for some reason comes along with anything with your brain, versus like my knee is bad or my shoulder goes out. There's no shame in that. It's just your shoulder. But if it's your brain, that somehow it feels like it's you doing it. So I always felt guilty. And what that post did for me, and it's shout out to everyone who helped me navigate that 36 hours of like, I can't believe I'm doing this. Why would I do this to myself? Mm-hmm. And then, but everyone was so supportive and saying like, this is your moment where you get to actually come out there and say this thing that's hard. And everyone can see that not only, have you been successful, but you're helping others. And so making that post and then finally presenting at the Epilepsy Foundation in front of 100 people, when I presented for an hour and talked about like my, what happened with my story, and it was just fascinating. There was about 100 people in the room. They all stood up and clapped. And I will tell you, in that moment, I was healed.
I could feel it. Like I'm getting goosebumps. And
I've never felt that acceptance, and I felt the same from the social post and from your reaching out. And I was like, I am going to talk about this, and I am going to say the hard thing, and I'm going to say that it actually was the best. It was the best fucking thing I've ever done for my disease, and I know that I'm seizure controlled. I'm so lucky to have a medication that lets me live my life normally. But I will tell you that keeping quiet about it I didn't realize it, but every day it was hurting me a little bit.
Yeah. And I'm sure the anxiety, right? Like there's a little bit of anxiety.
With seizures, it's the worst. Anxiety is it's anxiety, sleeping, eating, drinking, that's it. And anxiety is first. Like feeling actual anxiety can actually bring on a seizure if your threshold is low enough. So the point is letting yourself feel that comfort of like, I'm going to actually talk about this I actually think it was hard. I remember posting it at like 5:57 in the morning. I'm like, why am I doing this? And then I walked around. I took the dogs for a walk around the block. And I just posted it. And I did it on both LinkedIn and Facebook. And it had, like 85,000 people engaged with the post. And it was nuts. And the best part, the picture of me in the hospital with my shirt kind of half on, and I'm 16. I'm like, I look like my 16-year-old body. And it's like, like just like 20% like hotter than I could ever be ever in my life, because it's like my shirt's open and like brain surgery scars on my head, and I got a lot of positive comments about that from people I had no idea who they were. By the way, they were like, hot body.
Hey, I think your dad was spot on. Like we all have our shit, and when it's our shit, we feel like no one else has got that shit. And the fact is, we all have it. One of my biggies is like, like I would tell myself the story is that I wasn't smart. Like I was a hands-on learner, and I was a daydreamer. And, you go to Ithaca College and there's a Cornell right across the street just to remind you, you went to Cornell. I still hear, you went to Cornell? No, I was the idiot. I was on the other hill.
I don't think that's fair. think that's fair.
No, but
both hills are very smart.
You sound like my mom. Like, everybody gets a trophy.
I do sound like a mom. You're right. Sorry.
All right. And it's not that. It's the story we tell in our head. I had to come to grips with that for me. And this is not to knock, to your point. I love being a bomber. I love what I learned there. I really do. Yeah. But that was part of my thing is I kept telling myself that I wasn't smart until I'm not qualified to write a book. I'm not smart enough to have a podcast. And you go through this journey of 20 years, you're like, oh, this is just the story that's holding me back. And like you said, the minute you put that post into the world, for me, the moment was when I put a post into the world about writing Return on Courage. And I was afraid, one, people would like, you're not.
What? A book?
Or two, like, who am I to write a book about courage? Like, as a guy that's been writing pithy one-liners for Twitter for a living, right? Like, and when I actually put it out there, the book got better because they're like, oh, I love that topic. You need to talk to this person. And we're not alone. We all have our stuff. By the way, I'm assuming you're a Seinfeld fan, correct?
Totally.
Okay. Crazy. So I call it fear shrinkage, not just shrinkage. I think
it was called.
It was called out.
Did she know it? Did she know about shrinkage?
What is the biggest fear that you can have and like shrink it down? And yeah, there'll be another fear behind it, and there'll be another fear behind it. But like that's it. And I'm curious, like when you think about all the fears that you did have, or maybe you still do, like does epilepsy still scare you?
Having a seizure always scares me. I have to admit that's being out of control when your body is in control of when you're out of control of what your body does, it's really uncomfortable. But that shit is frightening. But I will admit to you, there's this weird sort of, I don't know, a benefit that comes with when someone unfortunately has a seizure around me, I become actually any medical thing. I become Dr. Golden suddenly. I am in it. I'm on it. I know exactly what to do. I know exactly what they need. And I think it really benefits, the podcast listener to if you wonder, what would you do in a moment if you see someone have a seizure, right? You should know, the truth is, one, they can totally hear you. Or at least in my condition, I can totally hear everything. So you have to be very careful about what you say. So that's very important. But the most important thing for a physicalness, right, is you can't the whole, I just want to make sure that I start to dispel all these horrible myths. Don't put anything in their mouth because you will get bit, and they are fine. The whole putting something wooden there in their mouth was a fear of swallowing their tongue, which is an antiquated hundreds of euros thing. It's not, that's the problem. Just get them on their side, and if they're, flailing wildly, try to protect yourself, but make sure they don't endlessly whack their head, which they have no control over. So you want something under their head and on their side, and just look at the time, see how long it is. And if in fact it goes longer than a minute or two, you probably want to call an ambulance. But if it's shorter than a minute or two, if they're seizure controlled, it's a breakthrough, and it's not necessarily we don't need an emergency ambulance. But the point is, there is a process, and that person can hear, and keeping them calm and keeping them safe, and knowing that they'll make them feel so much better because they are in fact being comforted by someone, even a stranger. I've had people, help me when I was having a seizure as a stranger, and I didn't get their name and I could never thank them sufficiently. But that person was there for me in a moment of my hour of need, or, minute of need. And then I don't know who they walk away, because you have this thing called the post-ictal phase, which is you don't totally, how to say words, but they're there, that person gone, but another person stayed. And the point is that that person was there and showed up in those moments. So if in fact there's a moment that someone's around you that needs help, you can stop and say, "Are you okay?" And if they're not able to respond, you can stick with them and get them comfortable. And if they need help, get them help.
This is good for me to hear, because I didn't know. Right? And it kind of makes sense, right? Stay a mirror, be in the mirror. If I'm panicking,
I'm right here. You're okay. Right.
Yeah, totally.
My hands on you. You're okay. That's that kind of thing. I got to tell you, it's a subtle piece of knowledge, but it's really empowering, and it makes you feel like, I know what to do in a seizure.
All right. Take us back to Bomberland. Let's go back.
Bomberland. It was freezing cold every day. Snowed a little bit in my snowshoes, getting to school at 8 a.m. classes.
All right. But when you think back to your experience, give me one massive takeaway, positive.
Yeah, I'm ready. I got it already in my head.
Oh, you do? Okay, run.
Best story ever. I got crazy into the TV production piece during my time because I just loved it. And I did, I think, 3 or 4 shows a week.
Josh, can you explain Park? Because most people don't know. They don't know.
Yes. So basically, it's a school upstairs and studios downstairs, radio, film production. I think 3 probably large broadcast studios, 1 smaller. And when I was there, this is the late 90s, but it had, 4 or 5 online online was actually on tape, but now it's probably online edit based. But the best part about that was there was always creative work, like in Dillingham, which was the music school. There's always people singing and performing and playing. When people were in Park, there was film production happening, kind of the beginnings of sitcom development, great comedy being developed. Andrew Daly was my roommate, who is now a comedian and brilliant and awesome. I was always in the roommate situation trying to be funny with a bunch of very funny people, which was basically, they were stand-up comedians now. So it was not fair, but I got into the funny book twice. The first line in the funny book was, "Hey guys, am I ever going to get in the book?" And the second line was, no, I mean, really, am I ever going to get in the book? And that was the only 2 times I was ever in the book. But the best part is that the Roy H. Park School of Communication was I was there the first year it opened, and we really broke in the school and made it. I don't know. I thought it was awesome for me. And every night when they would have a production, the story for me was I was doing Campus Currents. I was directing it I think as a sophomore, which was way too young for me to be doing anything like that. But just like the student play, I kind of got to do like the hard thing. And we had this moment that happened. I always recorded my director's track because I like to rewatch it later and be like, what could I do better? And there was a moment where the VT5 went down with the package inside. It was a 4.5 minute package. And it was this moment of realization where I realized I had to improv as a director and feed lines to the talent that was on set because we were live. And I had to figure out, how do we flip around the order of the package, which was relatively simple, and then technologically work on getting the tape out of the VT to go into another VT, videotape recorder that is, and roll it in. And it was 4 minutes of true perfect improv, which I have recorded and on videotape, watching me, because you did a special extra camera 4, which was the camera of the shot of the director, or basically the control room. So we have us, you see me losing my shit trying to figure out how to make the show feel still organically perfect for the watcher, and no one ever knew. But that moment of real torture was a great moment to teach me about, things can go wrong, but if you can keep your head together and paddle real hard underground, or underwater, it can actually end up being a real success. So much so that I'll bring it up on a podcast 30 years later and say, like, that moment I remember. And I learned from that moment is be prepared for anything and be prepared to improv. And that's, if anything, that was a fabulous lesson.
I am not surprised that our time has just zipped by here. I mean, look, it's funny. I like to sort of end the show by like, okay, let me step back and like, what were the 3 sort of takeaways for the show? I actually have 4, and then maybe I'll turn it over to you after for your like hammer on, because my answer is in that from Ithaca. And you talked about, like, when I look at your career, like, just staying curious. Like, don't be afraid to leap from vertical to vertical. Just, follow the path. Take the very best of what you learned from the last, but keep leaping if that's what you need to do. I'm not one to read a book again. Once I've done a chapter, I'm on to the next. The second you just said it was do the hard thing. For you, that was being a director as a sophomore and admitting that maybe you didn't know how to do it, but you had to figure it out anyway, because here we go, like, leap into the water. So I do think that doing the hard thing, the way, what's in the way is the way is a real thing and is a good takeaway. The number 3 I'm going to take from your pops, own your shit. We all have shit. That's a good one. I think the sooner you own it, actually, the sooner you can get on with it. And so easier said than done, right? Like, for you, it's tough. Epilepsy. For me, it's like, hey, you know what? I just, this is how I feel about myself. I don't feel that way anymore, but it was a true journey, broken record to get through it. And number 4, and I don't want the pun. It's going to happen because it's me too, but like, seize the day. I don't want to do the Caesar seize the day, but like, we don't know how long we're here. And like, why wouldn't you go for it? Why wouldn't you go? Like, so for you, it might be Eureka. Like, how does Eureka come back sooner than later? If you feel madly, wildly passionate about all the skills that you learned in that space, maybe there's this part of you that has to somehow side hustle that back into play. For me, it's this podcast. It's really unfair, actually, that guys like you come on the show and let me have a conversation, and I always learn something that's going to help me be better, and I hope the audience feels that way as well. So those are mine, right? Stay curious, do the hard thing, own your shit, seize the day. I love that. Turn it over to you, man. Take us home.
Gosh, I got to tell you, having a chance to talk about, my career and, all the things that I've done, putting it all together and seeing it, what's nice about this podcast is to sort of get to feel the arc of a whole person. And from a courageous lens, I guess my big message, and I have a memoir that I eventually promised my dad I would write, CDB, that's shout out, who is no longer with us, but endlessly in my ear. I told him I was going to write a book called 1,000 Thank You Notes, because I believe deeply in gratitude. And I believe that gratitude is the thing that is the sort of the great uniter. You can't, a good thank you, a good deep appreciation people feel it. They feel it like a halo. I feel deep gratitude that you invited me to tell my story, and it was connected to the post on epilepsy, and allowed me to sort of share whatever it is that might be helpful for people to know about, but also the fact that this is a chance to help other people, grow and learn, and help me grow and learn. And I just want to say thank you to let me do this, and to give me this platform to say it. But also, it feels like this is such a great thing that you're doing, to allow people to start to see the courageous, in everyone. And I just love this concept. So I was so happy to be a part of it. So thank you for having me.
I'm not crying. You're crying. Are you kidding me? Thank you for making an hour and coming on the show.
It's the best.
And my hope is that, you and I aren't done. I'd love to keep talking.
No, quite kidding.
And I think it's going to be interesting to see what Josh Golden does over the next decade.
That's right. I know, it's my plan. I have a whole vision. I don't know exactly what but I love the idea of doing the hard thing and continuing to do that thing wherever, I love what I'm doing, and I love continuing the puzzle. For me, the puzzle is the fun. And to be frank, doing the puzzle with people you enjoy makes it so much better.
Yeah. Amen to that. All right, Josh. Thanks, man. Appreciate you being on the show.
Take care. Thanks so much for the time.